Okay, welcome back to polynomials. Today we're going to talk about multiplying polynomials. Now, actually, I'm got a two-part series on this multiplying polynomials. So the first one I'm going to start very basic. Now, to understanding multiplying polynomials, we need to understand the distributive property. So first of all, distributive property is, in this case, you have 3x in front of the parentheses, 4x minus 5. That means multiplication. That means I'm going to distribute the 3x to the 4x. 3 times 4 is 12. And you got an x times an x, which is x squared. Now, I'm also going to distribute the 3x to the minus 5 to make that a minus 15x. Now, I can do the same thing with these fractions as well. Let's take a look at this. I have 1/2. I'm going to distribute first to the 6x squared. So that gives me 1/2 of 6 is 3. Then I'm going to take my exponents and add them together. X squared plus x squared is x to the 4th. Next, I'm going to take 1/2 x squared. I'm going to distribute to the minus 8x. So 1/2 of a negative 8, we can say is negative 4. Then I've got x squared and an x right here, which is really a 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. And finally, my last part is to distribute the 1/2 x squared times 1, and I get 1/2 x squared. So now I'm going to move on to x plus 3 times x plus 4. So this one, now what I want to do is I've got the x plus 3 in my first set of parentheses, and I'm going to distribute to my x plus 4, my second set of parentheses. This is also known as the FOIL method. Many of you have heard of the FOIL method and probably do understand this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my x and multiply by x. That means I got x squared. I'm going to take my x times 4, and since that's a positive 4, I'm going to make that plus 4x. Then I'm going to go under. 3 is positive, my x is positive. That means I've got 3x. And my 3 is positive, and my 4 is positive. I'm going to make that 12. Now, what I've noticed is I've got like terms. I got my 4x and my 3x. So my final answer is x squared plus 7x plus 12. Now I've got x plus 4 times x minus 5. So I'm going to take my x and distribute it. X times x is x squared. X times a negative 5 or a minus 5 is minus 5x. I'm going to go under, make that a plus 4x. Go under again, 4 times, treat that as a negative 5. 4 times negative 5 is a negative 20. Now, I can combine my negative 5x and my 4x. I get x squared minus x minus 20. Now, there is a minus 1 there, but you can leave the 1 out. I'm going to take x times x is x squared. X times a negative 5, which is a negative 5x. And I'm going to go under. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. And finally, negative 6 times negative 5. Two negatives make a positive when you multiply. So it makes it a plus 30. I've got some like terms that are in my middle. Negative 5 and a negative 6. That's x squared minus 11x plus 30. So if you want to, you can pause this at any time and try to work this on your own and then come back and see how I work it out. So now I've got an x times x, which is x squared. X times 3 is plus 3x. We'll go under. Negative 7 times x is negative 7x. And finally, negative 7 times 3 is a negative 21. I've got some like terms here. So my end result is x squared minus 4x minus 21. Now I've got fractions. Now before we shut down or turn this video off, I want you to treat this just like the same. X times x is x squared. X times a negative 2/5 is negative 2/5 x. I'm going to go under. That makes that a positive 3/5 x. And finally, this is where you would say 3 times a negative 2 makes that a minus 6. Then 5 times 5 is 25. I've got my fractions, a negative 2/5 and a positive 3/5. That makes that a positive 1/5 x. I cannot do anything with my minus 6 over 25. Now sometimes we write this in different order. Like take a look at this next one. It's the same concept, except I don't have the variable in the front of it. So now we treat this the same way. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6n. Negative 7n times a positive 1 is a negative 7n. And finally, a negative 7n times a negative 6n gives me a positive 42n squared. Now I can combine my middle terms. And I get 1 minus 13n plus 42n squared. And you can also write this, you do your highest exponents first, so that could be written as 42n squared minus 13n, and since that 1 is positive, plus 1. And finally, here's a special case. Let's take a look at this one. I've got x minus 6 times x plus 6. I'm going to do the same type thing. X times x is x squared. X times a positive 6 is a positive 6x. Negative 6 times x is minus 6x. And finally, negative 6 times 6 is a minus 36. Now take a look at my middle terms. They cancel each other out. X squared minus 36. This special case is a perfect square. Now, one hint on the perfect square is anytime the parentheses looks the same except the signs are different, that means the middle terms will cancel each other out. Thank you for listening, and be looking out for my polynomials multiplication part 2. Thank you for listening.